The sun was just peeking over the mango groves of Padmapur, painting the sky in lovely shades of orange and pink. It was a beautiful Friday morning, just like any other. The roosters were crowing their morning songs, and the sweet smell of jasmine flowers drifted through the air. Little Meena, who was only 8 years old, was helping her Amma in the garden. They were picking bright red tomatoes for the market. The village was peaceful and happy. Everyone was getting ready for the day, with no idea that something very, very strange was about to happen. It was a morning full of promise and sunshine, a perfect start to what they thought would be a perfectly normal day. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the whole village. It was not a cloud shadow, it was much bigger and darker. The air grew still, and the birds stopped singing their cheerful tunes. Meena looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. The shadow grew larger and larger, covering everything like a giant blanket. The villagers came out of their houses, pointing up at the sky with puzzled faces. What could it be? It was moving so fast and it was so enormous. It was not an airplane, and it was certainly not a storm cloud. It was something they had never seen before in all their lives, something that made their hearts beat a little faster with a mix of fear and curiosity. With a mighty whoosh that rustled every leaf on every tree, the thing landed right in the middle of the village square. It was a pigeon, but it was no ordinary pigeon. It was a giant pigeon, as tall as the temple and as wide as 3 bullock carts put together. Its feathers were a soft, shimmering gray, and its eyes were like 2 big, shiny orange marbles. It blinked slowly, looking down at the tiny people below. The villagers gasped and screamed. They had never seen such a creature. It was magnificent and terrifying all at once. The giant bird ruffled its feathers, and a gust of wind knocked over a fruit seller's cart, sending mangoes and bananas rolling everywhere. Panic spread through Padmapur like wildfire. People ran into their homes shouting and locking their doors. The village headman, Mr. Sharma, tried to be brave, but his knees were knocking together like coconuts. The giant pigeon cooed, and the sound was like a low rumble of thunder, shaking the very ground. It took a clumsy step, and its big pink foot accidentally broke a few tiles on Mrs. Gupta's roof. Little Raju's kitten, Mittens, scurried up a tree, too scared to come down. The village was in chaos. The giant bird wasn't trying to be mean, it just seemed lost and confused, but its size was causing a whole lot of trouble for the tiny village of Padmapur. While everyone else was hiding, little Meena was peeking out from behind a curtain. She wasn't scared like the others. She felt a little bit sorry for the big bird. It looked so lonely and bewildered, all by itself in the middle of their village square. It wasn't roaring or trying to hurt anyone, it was just looking around, its head tilted to one side as if it were trying to understand where it was. Meena thought it looked hungry. When her tummy rumbled, she always felt a bit grumpy too. Maybe the giant pigeon was just grumpy because it was very, very hungry. An idea began to bubble in her clever little head. Meena remembered her grandmother's special secret dosa recipe. Her grandmother, her potty, always said it was a magical recipe. She said it could make the saddest person smile and the grumpiest person happy. The dosas were always so crispy and golden, and they smelled so delicious that no one could ever resist them. Potty had taught Meena how to make them just last week. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a whole lot of love, Potty had said with a wink. Meena thought, if these dosas can make people happy, maybe they can make a giant pigeon happy too. It was a very brave and very silly idea, but it was the only one she had. She tiptoed into the kitchen, her heart thumping with excitement. Her Amma and Appa were too busy worrying to notice her. Meena pulled a stool over to the counter and found the big bowl of dosa batter her Amma had made that morning. It was Potty's secret recipe. She remembered all the steps perfectly. She lit the stove, her small hands working carefully. She poured a giant ladleful of the creamy white batter onto the hot pan. It sizzled and spread into a big, perfect circle. The wonderful, yummy smell of a fresh dosa began to fill the kitchen. It was the most hopeful smell in the world. Meena didn't just make one dosa. Oh no, that wouldn't be enough for a giant pigeon. She made another and another and another. Soon she had a huge stack of warm, golden, crispy dosas. They were the biggest and best dosas anyone had ever seen in Padmapur. They smelled of roasted rice and lentils, with a hint of fenugreek, just like Potty's. Meena piled them high on the largest tray she could find. Now came the hard part. She had to take the dosas out to the giant pigeon. She took a deep breath, her small shoulders set with determination. She was going to save her village with a tray of dosas. Holding the heavy tray with both hands, Meena pushed the kitchen door open with her foot. She walked slowly and carefully out into the deserted village square. The giant pigeon was still there, looking rather sad now. It was gently pecking at the fountain, but only a few drops of water came out. When it saw Meena, it stopped and stared down at her with its big orange eyes. A hush fell over the village. From behind their windows, the villagers watched, their hearts in their mouths. What was that little girl doing? Was she mad? She was walking right up to the enormous creature that had terrified them all. Meena didn't run. She walked steadily forward, one small step at a time. She held up the tray of dosas and said in her clearest, bravest voice, "Hello, Mr. Pigeon. Are you hungry? I brought you something to eat." The pigeon tilted its massive head, making a soft, curious cooing sound. The delicious smell of the fresh dosas wafted up to its beak. Its big orange eyes blinked, and then they focused on the golden brown stack on the tray. It had probably never smelled anything so wonderful in its whole life. It took a very gentle step closer, being careful not to step on any houses this time. Very, very slowly, the giant pigeon lowered its head. Its beak, which was bigger than Meena herself, came closer and closer to the tray. Meena stood perfectly still, even though her knees felt a little wobbly. With the utmost gentleness, the pigeon took one of the dosas from the top of the pile. It tossed it into the air and caught it perfectly in its beak. It gobbled it down in one gulp. Then it looked at Meena and cooed again, a much happier, friendlier sound this time. It was a thank you coo. The bird then proceeded to eat the rest of the dosas, one by one, with delicate little pecks. The villagers watching from their windows could not believe their eyes. Little Meena was feeding the giant beast. She was not being eaten or trampled. She was making friends with it. The pigeon, now full and happy, nudged Meena's shoulder gently with the side of its beak. It was a soft, feathery thank you kiss. Meena giggled and patted its beak. The fearsome monster that had invaded their village was actually just a big, gentle bird that had lost its way and had a very rumbly tummy. Meena's kindness and her grandmother's magical dosa recipe had worked. The village was safe. With its tummy full of delicious dosas, the giant pigeon looked much more cheerful. It drank deeply from the village well, slurping up the water with happy gurgles. Its grumpy mood had completely vanished, replaced by a calm and peaceful energy. It looked around at the village of Padmapur, not with confusion, but with a friendly gaze. It even used its beak to gently push the fallen mangoes back into the fruit seller's cart. The villagers slowly started to come out of their houses, still a bit nervous, but mostly amazed by what they had just seen. Meena stood beside her new friend, waving at her neighbors with a proud smile. The giant pigeon looked up at the sky, then back down at Meena. It seemed to know it was time to go. It couldn't stay in a village that was so small for it. It gave one last, soft coo, a sound that now sounded like a lovely, deep song. It nudged Meena one more time, a gentle goodbye. Then, with a powerful beat of its enormous wings, it pushed off from the ground. A great gust of wind swept through the square, but this time, nobody was scared. They just waved as the magnificent bird soared up, and away into the bright blue sky. It circled the village once, as if to say thank you and farewell. As the pigeon became a tiny speck in the distance, the villagers of Padmapur let out a huge cheer. They rushed towards Meena, lifting her onto their shoulders. "Hooray for Meena!" they shouted. "Meena, the Dosa diplomat! She saved us all!" Mr. Sharma, the village headman, declared that Meena was the bravest girl in the whole country. Mrs. Gupta promised to fix her own roof and bake Meena a cake. Even little Raju's kitten, Mittens, finally came down from the tree and rubbed against Meena's legs, purring loudly. Everyone was so proud of her. She hadn't used weapons or tricks. She had used kindness, courage, and a very special recipe. From that day on, the 13th of June was known in Padmapur as Giant Dosa Day. Every year, the whole village would gather in the square to make and share gigantic dosas, remembering the day a giant pigeon came to visit. Meena became a local hero, a reminder to everyone that sometimes the biggest problems don't need big solutions. Sometimes all you need is a little bit of understanding, a dash of bravery, and a plate full of warm, crispy dosas made with a whole lot of love. And Meena knew in her heart that her potty's secret recipe truly was magical after all.